Hey there. So let me move this downward a bit more just so you can see me. I'm hoping I can heard. We'll see though. So my name is Leonard Treatman, and the reason why I am making this post today is I wanted to actually share how to avoid poor taxes, as they're called. Now you've probably heard of them before, and what poor taxes are these are taxes that are essentially levied on the poor for their extra income. You've probably heard of a few of them before too. So the first one you've probably heard of would be called whatchamacallit, the lottery. Obviously, lotteries and casinos are run by state agencies, and there's a reason why this is the case. Have you ever heard someone say, "Oh, I wish I was Indian. If I was Indian, I would have or I have one eighth Navajo or something." They'd be like, "I'd be loaded." Well, the reason why this is the case is that the Indian territories are allowed to run their own kind of casinos. Now, why this is important is that casinos, I give an example. Why is there a city in the desert in Las Vegas? Because the casino makes more money from the gamblers than the gamblers make from it. I mean, there are rare exceptions, and some people go there fully knowledgeable of this as entertainment, which is understandable. It's definitely entertainment, but it's expensive entertainment. Now, the reason why this is considered a poor tax is essentially because when you go there, your extra income or presumed extra income, the income you spend on gambling that you shouldn't be spending on gambling, you're losing a percentage of it. I heard some of the best ratioed games are like 47% or something, supposed to be blackjack. Like they win 53% of the time. That means there's a 3% tax on most games. You don't know it because it's like per 100, but you're 53% likely to lose each game. And that's one of the better percentage ones. Some are even worse than that. So you're very unlikely to win. I've heard foolish stories of people gambling their life savings, and some get wiped out. Some are even richer. But the thing is, it is far more likely. Like if you had 100 of those people, 53 of them would become destitute, whereas 47 of them would actually end up in a better situation. So that's number one. So gambling is a huge one. Number two is state lotteries. Do you ever wonder why you can't start your own lottery? Why it's considered to be illegal? If you got too big, why you get shut down? Essentially, it's because a lottery is a great way to make money. Do you know why lottery wages get redistributed to the school systems? Because it's essentially an extra tax. There's a reason why, like Michigan State Lottery goes to the school system because it's poor education that leads to that place in the first spot. Anytime you look at a system like this, you need to understand how they're getting paid. They're making money from your um, thing there. You need to understand the full picture before you put money into it, or there's a very strong likelihood you're falling into a trap. The reason why this occurs is if you are, in fact, like let's say you're buying a lottery ticket, um, by buying a lottery ticket, you are essentially paying poor tax. It's called like you're very unlikely to win, and you're more likely to put in money that will be redistributed by a state agency toward education. Which I guess if you like paying extra taxes, go ahead, but you're very unlikely to win. You could win once in a while, but if you saved up that monthly amount, you make far more. That's number two. Number three is inflation. So you probably heard of this term before, inflation. Inflation's 2% less value your dollars of a year. I'll give an example. This is a little harder. I don't have like an actual buck on me. I choose not to carry actual currency whenever I can avoid it. But give an example. 10 cents. This is a dime. I got like an old bag of change. So dime is worth 10 cents, right? 10 of these is a buck. Every year, your dollar is worth 2 cents less than the previous year on average. It can be 1 cent some years it's 2 cents. But on average, the U.S. government prints more money. The amount of money determines the value of the U.S. dollar. U.S. dollar has a really high value, right? The pound's worth more, but, like it has a very high value and it's regulated. So when the U.S. prints more of it, the value goes down in comparison to other currencies. Every year, the value goes down by either 1 or 2% on average, right? So right now, our value of our dollar is dropping. So have you heard of the person who puts some money in their mattress or something? They're like, oh, I'm going to be really smart and put all my money in the mattress. I don't trust banks. Well, they are losing 2% to the banks each year with the money in their mattress. The reason why this occurs is you are basically, when the money is in there, you're losing 2% each year because your thing is worth less. More is being made of it. So let's say there's $10 million in the economy, which obviously is not the right amount because it's lower. But let's say there's $10 million, 10 trillion, right? The next year, let's say there's 10.02 trillion. The thing is that 10 trillion isn't worth as much because of that 0.02. That 0.02 that's been introduced brought down the value of 10 trillion. It's like when I was a kid, you could buy a Coca-Cola bottle, the big ones, for $1. Now they're $1.50. Why? Because it's been 25 years. That's 50% increase. It's like Happy Meals cost more, freaking burgers cost more, everything costs more, and it will continue to go this way because it's worth 2% more. Storing money is not an effective way. The best way to mitigate this loss from inflation is by having your money in a bank. Now, most banks will offer either 1 or sometimes in some cases 2% interest per year. Now, that interest, you're not actually earning money. You're staving off inflation. So, like if you have a 1% interest a year in a checking account, that actually means that you're still losing on average 1% of the value of your account each year, which is depressing to say the least, but that is why you shouldn't stay up too much in your account, just an emergency fund. So if that's useful at all, that's why those are 3 gigantic poor taxes that you just honestly I would not have a part of if I were you. The third thing I'd like to bring up, or the fourth thing rather I'd like to bring up, is the next way kind of to avoid. So the next big one is you have what's called living taxes or utility taxes, right? So I'll give you an example. My phone, I have AT&T. It's $45 a month per contract. I just basic data and calling people. The thing is, this $40 a month ends up being like if you take 45 and you times that by 12, you're going to get the annual amount, right? 12 times 45 is 540. Now, AT&T gives you the option to buy this in bulk. Obviously, it's even worse if you're buying like a Go phone. A Go phone is probably like 50. So 50 times 12, your annual amount is 600, whereas 12 times 45 is 540. Now, AT&T gives you the option to like do pay statements, like auto pay. So the statement essentially gets sent to your phone versus getting sent somewhere else. So when the statement sends it to your phone, and when you do an auto pay, they shave off $5 off your bill. Now, don't get me wrong, you're still paying $5 in taxes. So, like that person who's paying 45 is actually paying something like 50, 51, 52. If you're paying 40, you're paying 45. And if you're paying 50, you're paying probably like 57. So, the gist of it is you can actually save quite a bit by doing this. So, if you take, like, let's say you're paying your base is 45, or your base is 40 and you're paying $5 in taxes, you're paying 45. That's $540 a year, as opposed to 50 times 12, which would be the 45 plus the $5 in taxes, which is 600 a year, meaning you're saving $60. Now that doesn't seem like much, but when you consider the average or the minimum wage is $9.40, you're making essentially 6 hours worth of work pre-taxes for nothing. Now, on average, if you're in the lower class, you'll be paying something like a quarter of your wages to taxes between state, federal, Social Security, and all the other ones, right? So you're paying 1/4. So out of every dollar, you're paying 25 cents. Now, if you're middle class, lower middle class like myself, you're going to pay 1/3 of whatever you make in taxes. So, just if it is, you will lose money one way or another. It's just a matter of controlling how much you lose. Now, one big way I recommend is a lot of these corporations have like a discount for long-term purchases, and I'll give you a few examples of this. That AT&T is the first one. So I'm saving $5 a month or $60 a year just from AT&T by doing that. I'm actually saving 120 if you consider from Go phone to the contract. I save 5. So, but if you talk about how so from the Go phone that costs $50 a month, you save 5 by signing up for the contract. You pay 5 more by having by having the auto pay and by having the transactions. So you're saving essentially $10 a month between those two. But there's other things you do too. Like, for example, Comcast. I have Comcast as my local internet, right? And they have this deal where if you pay for your own router, which is a $40 router, you end up saving like $15 a month because they rent theirs to you for $15 a month. So if you take 15 and times that by 12, you have $180. So a $40 router pays for itself in the first 3 months because you're saving $15 a month. Obviously, you have 4 months go by, poof, you've already paid for it. I mean, obviously, there's taxes too, so you're probably talking closer to 5, but year 2 is total profit. So you're talking between these two, you're talking like 180 from that first example, or 180 plus 120 is a grand total of 300, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. And then so Comcast also has this option where you can do bill, right? You can like save $5 by paying You can save $5 by having statements and by getting payments automatically. So it's automatically taken from your card, so you save $5. That seems not like much overall, but if you times that by 12, you're talking 60. So that 300 becomes 360, which is huge. That's $360 saved off of normal stuff. That's pre-tax. So that's like after tax. So like if you make $10 an hour, for instance, you're probably paying something like a quarter of that. So you're actually making $7.50 an hour after taxes, right? So if you're making $7 an hour and you're doing these things I'm telling you here, you're saving 360, which is equivalent to let me actually find out how much that would be in terms of hours worked. But you're talking about like annually saving 48 hours. It's a week and 8 days worth at a $10 an hour pay rate, which a lot of people are making. So that's something around the average. So it's huge things like that can just completely change how you live. Now, a third thing I'd like to bring into the fold would be credit cards. Now, a lot of credit cards have the option, like if you pay it off multiple times a month, to give like something like 1.5 times the tax back. Let's say you pay for everything on a credit card, and your monthly expenditure is $1,800 a month, right? Which seems like a very reasonable amount for a household, at least. Something between $1,800 and $2,000 a month. So let's just make it easy and say $2,000 a month is your monthly spending. You spend $2,000 a month, or you spend $24,000 a year, which is the average person earns around 25,000. So this seems somewhat accurate. Now, obviously, households are around 50 in the U.S. So if you spend $2,000 a month, and let's say 1,500 of that you can put on the credit card. Now, most services allow credit card payment. Like when you go to pay for your gas, it allows credit card payment. Many others allow this too. Some charge you an additional 3% for credit card payment, some do not. Like my rent at my current apartment charges an additional 3%. So if I chose to do a credit card payment, I'd be charged 3%. Many credit cards these days allow 1.5% back. So if you take 1.5 and you times that by services that don't add an additional 3%, places that large companies that do it for convenience and to increase sales revenue and decrease sales volume, you'll save a shit ton of money. Like I'll give an example. I might have something like 1,000, maybe I want to say like $800 or $900 a month I spend on stuff like this, where this is like credit card stuff. This is stuff you can actually spend money on your credit card that do not add an additional 3%. We're talking like fast food places. They don't add extra. Your meal's the same amount regardlessly. Groceries, your meal's the same amount. They don't charge you extra at Walmart to buy whatchamacallit. They don't charge you extra to pay for the credit card. You might as well pay the credit card as fast as they want you to. They encourage it. So if you have $800 in 1 month and you times that by 0.0, so 800, and this is per month, times 0.015, which is 1.5%, for instance, which is my credit card gives me back. It's $12 additional income each month, just passively. If you times that by 12, you get the annual amount, which is something like $140 a year for doing jack shit. It's just changing the method you pay. If you can develop more methods like this, you will slowly start to pull yourself out of poverty, like which is what I'm attempting to do now. Like my income is teetering between the lower middle class and the upper lower class, which is considered to be the working poor. Obviously, it's everyone has their own situation, but by living by myself, I'm paying a huge amount. I guess that would bring me to the fifth, and I guess the final thing I want to talk about today. So if you have a roommate, you're supposed to, so the average household income in the United States is 50K. And by having a 50K income, you are living like everyone else. That is, the average household size also is 2.5 people, meaning on average, households consist of between 2 and 3 people. Usually it's a married couple and a kid. But if you're someone like myself, there's no reason not to have a roommate. If you don't have a roommate, you're losing money unnecessarily. I'll give you an example why. Like my apartment is expensive. It is terrible for one person. There's no reason I should be having here myself except for like noise. Like I hate having noise. So I'm willing to pay that extra amount even though I'm losing money. But you can easily save $400 or $500 a month by having a roommate. And the reason why you should do that is because a lot of your utilities, like your base rent, let's say your base rent around Michigan area is $700 or so. So your base rent for 1 bedroom is $700, but the base rent for 2 bedrooms is $1,000, which seems like more until you realize it's split 2 ways. So let's say you split it evenly with someone else. Your 700 to 750, which is the average for an individual, would drop to about 500 because you're splitting it with someone else. So you're saving $250 a month just right there. Now, if you add an addition to that, you would have utilities. Let's say you're using electricity. Like certain things cost electricity, like heating the place, like cooling. You both benefit from it. It's not like one person benefits more than another. I mean, you might have slight disagreement on the temperature, but by being able to figure that out, you'll save yourself a shit ton. Now, this place costs something between 100 to anywhere from like 70 to $400 a month in terms of just heating and cooling the place and electricity. Now, I sit in a dark room all the time, so my electricity use is pretty low, but other people don't have that same luxury. Like, they can't stand 60-degree temperatures. They don't like it as much as I do. So the thing is, like, if you have a roommate, you can split that cost in half, essentially. You're going to use a little more electricity, but there's base things that do not cost more. Another big thing is like car usage. Like, your car breaks down, your roommate might be able to give you a ride. Stuff like that is huge, because the thing is, if you pay an Uber ride, like let's say to go across the city, you might pay $50. There and like back, you might pay like 80 altogether. Like, it's like $80 wipes away a day's wages after taxes, which is stupid. Like, having the ability, like a support network like that, so you help your friend at work when they lose and they help you. Poof, guess what? You're both profiting from it tremendously. It's huge things like that that really have the ability to transform how you live. Another big one is like laundry. Like, if you pick an apartment with laundry, sometimes it's worthwhile to pick a more expensive apartment, because then you can actually do laundry there. Like, my laundry here cost me something like I want to say like $12 a month or something, or 15-ish, which is for the entire month for all the laundry is amazing. Because if you go to a laundromat, that same amount could cost you quite a bit more, and it's in the building too, which saves me driving costs. Like, I guess I'll go 2 more points in this kind of thing before I end this thing. So for driving costs, like, well, I guess I'll do laundry first. So laundry, like, I used to go when I lived in Whitmore Lake, there was a laundromat, and they would charge essentially $1 per pound. So I'd pay something like $100 a month just for laundry, which right now I'm paying 15 a month plus the cost of materials like drying, lints, and like other stuff. So probably around like 20, 25 a month tops. So I'm paying 1/4 of the previous cost. Now, it sounds awful, right? But the thing is, like, it's way better, because if you save $75 a month, $75, every penny you save is a penny you don't pay tax on, which is scary, but that's the way it is. Like, if you can not do a service or perform a service that you normally would do yourself, so just like a haircut, like if you can cut your own hair for $20, and let's say you do that 6 times a year or something, every 2 months or so, and you end up saving yourself $20 each time, you save yourself $120. It's huge. Um, but like, the ability to do something like that, like cook, for instance, is gigantic. Like, you don't know how much you'll be able to save. You can pull yourself out of like poverty for the most part. I mean, obviously your base wage has a big effect on it, but having the ability to use your money, the funds you do have effectively, is a life skill that pays for itself. Now, the last thing I'd like to say is, I guess the 5 expenses when it comes to a car, just to kind of put this out there, because I've seen a lot of people do Uber, and I've actually taken an Uber, and I've tried to explain to the driver, like, you're losing money, but they don't understand. So let me kind of spell it out. Every time you drive anywhere, you have 5 expenses. The first expense is the gasoline. Like, your car goes a certain amount of gallons per mile. You have to fill it up. It costs what, $25 a tank? Like, depends on your car. If you have a big car, which you're probably not doing Uber with, but it costs like quite a bit more. The second expense is insurance. So the more you drive and the more miles in the car, the more insurance that your car is supposed to have. Like, my rate would go up if I drove an extra 10,000 miles a year. And it's a cost. No, it's a low cost. It's still a cost. The thing is, like, let's say it's like $2 a month for the entire year. You're talking what, like $24 extra in the year. That's money out of my pocket that I don't like paying. Number 3 is maintenance. The more you drive, the more maintenance you have to do. So, like, if I drive, let's give an example. Like, the job I had before my current one, I would drive 120-ish miles a day, and I would do this commute 5 times a week. So 120 times 5. I think I'm overestimating. I think it's closer to like maybe like 110. So 110 times 5 is 550, and then times that by 4, which is the average week, you have 220. And then obviously some weeks are going to be more. So let's do 550 times 52, the number of weeks in a year. You have 28,600 miles, which is tremendous. You have to keep in mind, like, a lot of things have to be done by a mile amount. Like, oil is every 5,000 miles, right? So that right there, 28,000 is 5.5 oil changes. So that means like what, like $30, $39.99, maybe 32. Let's say it's 32. 32 times 5 is 160. But then there's 0.5. So half of that's either going to be on 1 year and half's going to be in the next. Every 2 years, you're going to have a little more. So 160 times, or let's say 32 times 6 92 plus 160, your 2-year amount would be 352. Divide that by 2 for 1 year, and you'd have 176. So you're having a higher rate regardlessly. So you have maintenance, you have gas, and you have higher insurance. The next one is repair. So when you drive more, your chance of a crash goes up. Your chance of scraping goes up. Your chance of having a piece of gravel fly up and crack your windshield goes up. Like that happened to me the other year, last year. A piece of gravel flew up and hit my windshield. That windshield replacement for my old car, which is cheaper because old windshields are cheaper, was $250. The thing is, a $250 replacement is just kind of the name of the game. It's wear and tear. It comes from driving too much. The thing is, if you do if you go driving and you're going to incur damage once in a while, it might be someone ramming the back of you at a red light. Even if you're careful, like there's not really much you can do to avoid it. Like it's going to rain, maybe a piece of stick might fall down. You have no place but to hit the stick, and it damages your tire. Tire deflates, you have to buy a new one. So you have this. The fourth cost is called damage, which it happens. It's just a part of driving. And the fifth and final cost of driving is depreciation. Depreciation is pretty simple. Your car starts off with an initial amount, and I would actually recommend going to what it's called a Kelly Blue Book. So if I go to Kelly Blue Book, which is like a service, they tell you how much your car is worth and what its value is and whatnot. You hit my car's value, you can actually see what the current value of your car is, trade-in value of a car like yours. And you put in the year. Like I have a 2009, and then Pontiac G3. With 130,000 miles, which is awful. Like, pretty much everyone else has a better car than me, but there's a reason why I do this. I keep doing this because once I pay this thing off fully, it's going to be cheaper to have a cheaper car. I mean, cars are a status symbol, and I just don't choose to have a status symbol because it's not worth my time. It's not worth my money. But I mean, you put your amount in here, and you're going to get an idea of how much your car is worth. And the longer you can run, the better. So let's say I'm good. Like my car is considered to be good, which it may or may not. Like you end up having like how your car's condition is, how many miles, is it automatic, is it manual, and it pumps in all this stuff. But based on the miles, you can have very different amounts. Like this thing's saying it's worth somewhere between $500 and $1,000, which I think is on the low end. But it's talking to a dealer. But if you sell to a private party, it's supposed to be more, and you're talking like 2 to 4K, which probably more likely, but you remember it takes months to do that. And obviously everyone else's car is pretty much worth more than mine at this point. You could go like if you're going down the walk up and down, and you look at all the cars, you're gonna be like, this one's worth like 10K, this one's worth that. Like mine's gross too. I keep it kind of in disrepair. So but let's say it was 100,000 miles. So a 100,000 mile car is worth significantly more than 130. Like this is saying 2.5 to 4.6. Let's say it's a 50,000 mile car. Let's say 50,000 miles on this car. How much is it worth if it would be that same car? We're talking 3K to 5K. So essentially, what is it? Let's say I had 25,000 miles on this, right? And it varies by model too, because some are more effective the longer they go. Some have a base value as long as they run. Like this, like 75,000 miles is 2.8 to 4.8. So essentially, there's this what is it, like $300 or so per every 25K? And I guess it would probably accelerate at some point too. Like if I put 150,000 miles, I'm going to guess that it's going to be worth significantly less than 125. No, it's looking like every 25,000 miles or so, it loses like $300 off the value of the car. So it's just really, you have these 5 different costs. And so what these people like the Uber drivers and stuff don't seem to get is that you usually will lose money for the amount they're paying you. If they're paying you sub minimum wage, even if you have a lot of hours and it's somewhat relaxing, you're paying. Let's say you're getting paid $7, $7 an hour, and the thing is, you're driving places, right? So you're paying what? Like it really depends on the car mileage, but let's say you're running a Pontiac G3, right? And you're paying like what, like a certain amount of cents a mile. Like my car runs from like 25 miles a gallon, and gallons are something like $3. So if you talk 25 miles a gallon is $3, and one trip might be $3 just in terms of gas there. And then if you do what's called a drudge run on the way back, where you drive back the same distance to the next person you need to pick up, or you drive to the person to pick up and then drive them 25 miles, and you're going both ways, you're talking something like 50 miles or like $6 worth of gas. Now, let's say you had 1,000 of these. So you times that by 1,000, and let's say that's all the trips you did in a month. you'd have something like 50,000 miles really quickly. And now keep in mind, like the car depreciation, you're talking $600 from that, right? So you're talking $600 for car depreciation plus. We did the comparison before, where every 25 miles is essentially $3, right? Under this kind of formula we're doing here. So now let's say we do so it's we're talking essentially about $3,000 of the gas, if I'm not mistaken. Let's say 50,000 divided by 25 is $2,000 of the gas. So 600 plus 2,000 is 2,600, right? Give a kind of good info. $2,600 so far. Now we've talked through two of the five. Let's say insurance. Let's say you go up like $10 a month per because the average person drives in like around 14,000 miles, right? Like right now to work every day and back, I drive something like maybe 60 miles. If you times that by five, you get 300, which is a weekly amount. If you times that by 52, you get 15,600, which is around average, just a little lower than on average. So, but the thing is, if you're driving, let's say 50,000 a month on Uber, you're doing significantly higher, and your insurance, you can expect a significantly costlier insurance amount. Like I'm going on here right now, and I'm going to insurance calculator car just to kind of get a little more closer. That was not proper English. Sorry. If I go to a car insurance estimator, which I guess I went to carinsurance.com/car insurance estimator, and I put 48111 zip code, and I put my age, and I put a thingy on here, and I get a quote. It's going to give me ideas of how much it's worth. But the thing is, depending on how much you drive every year, it costs more. It's not like a huge amount. We're probably talking like maybe a buck or $2 a month per 1,000 miles extra or something. But when you're talking 50,000, you're probably talking like $20 a month minimum. I'm going to put it there. I think that's on the low end of the estimate, but just to put it there. So let's say $240 additional dollars. So 2,600 plus 240 is 2,840. Now, if you're driving 50,000 miles, you're likely going to need a few oil changes because you're probably need 10 oil changes per month. So 10 times 30 is the oil changes just for oil changes, which is insane. That's 300. So 3,140 is the new amount, $3,140. And now, let's say you have a couple of things. Let's say your tire goes bad after every 50. So you either replace 4 tires at 50,000, and let's say each one's $50. That's $200 right there. There's other things like turpentine belts and other stuff. I mean, I would be very surprised if you were not paying at least $1,000 for maintenance stuff. I mean, it would be ridiculous not to, because your car has like a little plan will tell you, oh, this thing dies at 25, this dies at 50. Every 25,000 miles, it has what expires. It has the expectation that you replace it or it will become damaged. So the thing is, if you don't replace those, they become damaged. If you don't change the oil, it becomes damaged. You don't change the power steering, it becomes damaged. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So you're having a total cost that's going up. You're probably looking at $4,000 a month outgoing. And now let's say $4,000 a month outgoing. Let's just say that's a good amount, because if you're doing 50,000 miles, it seems like that's an estimate. Don't get me wrong, you'll have to do your own calculations to get it precise, but 4,000 seems like a decent estimate. If you're doing 50,000, let's say in a small car that's fuel efficient, like I was described before. So now if you do that, 4,000, and now how much are you actually making? Let's say you make $30 a ride after everything's taken out, and you do, let's say, 5,000 rides. Or I don't even know, like 1,000, 2,000. I do not know how many rides people do, but let's say you do 30 times 2,000. So you do 2,000 rides in this month, and you do 5,000 miles or 50,000 miles overall. You get something like 60,000 supposedly dollars. I think I estimated that too high, because I've heard of people making like 10,000 in a month in Uber post taxes, but I don't know. It just ends up being like I think I'm putting too many rides in there. I can't recall how many rides, the exact number I used to do, but I did it for fun, just for a little after work. I do like 2 or 3 a day, and I'd end up getting like maybe like $60, $70 after it all for 2 or 3. and then Uber would take a share, tax would take a share, and you end up having something like $50 or something out of that 70. And it was fun because you get to talk to people. Flight attendants would be like, "Hey, you want to go like hang out in my room?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" But the problem is, it's not anything beyond entertainment because if you're making, let's say, $50 each day and you're doing it, let's say that was me part time. Let's say someone else who's doing it full time might make 300 in a day, and then Uber takes you to share all that. Maybe you're left with 250 or 220 or something like that, and then you have to pay that additional 4,000. You're basically losing half what you're making. You'd be making more working at a minimum wage job because then you wouldn't have to worry about the car expenses at the same amount. Like pick one near you, of course, but it's just crazy how much it adds up so quickly. Like even when I'm using my car normally, I'm just astounded by how much it costs. Like even with half uses, like I'm doing now, where I'm using around the sun as a normal person, the costs for normal car uses are awful. You're probably looking like my car. I'm driving 15,000 miles, right? That's going to be probably the amount I drive this year, something around that amount. If you take 15,000 and then divide that by, let's say, 25, which is the average I get on road use, you get 600 gallons of gas used. Times that by three for the dollar per hours, you're talking $1,800 in just gas. Now I'm getting like 1.5% of that cost back on my credit card, of course, which is smart. But um, you can also add like car usage. Like let's say one of my tires goes bad because it's likely to happen. I might spend 30 or 40 because I know this place that does tires for cheap and they're used. I mean, it's cheaper, they last shorter, but it's more cost effective. Like I'm probably going to have a number of 3 oil changes at least. And you're talking $30 an oil changed, which is 90. You're talking depreciation of about, I want to say a little less, about like 200, 250 depreciation. We're talking repair. I have no doubt something will break and I have to repair it. Like I'm about to have to repair my stupid windshield, which is 250. So it's like, and I have no doubt something will also break this year. It's just how the life works. Like I'll probably have 2 or 3 breaks. I tend to have one maintenance issue every 3 or 4 months. And I'm driving less. I might be able to extend it to 5 or 6, but it's still unlikely that I'll escape it entirely. So you're talking about like altogether like $4,000 or $5,000 a year, and that's before car payments, which I'm still making, which is awful. $72.60 something, right? Which is awful. Like times that by 12, and you get my overall amount, which is like a yearly. I pay something like $900, which is it's low, it's cheap. I'm not like one of those people who's paying 150 for their car lease, which is stupid because I also pay a front amount of like 3 or 4 thousand, which then amount they could buy a used car, and they could keep that car for 5 years, or they're paying nothing on that end, like the payment end. But I think you're starting to get what I'm talking about. There's ways to save money on everything, and you have to start thinking about things objectively, but also in a long-term span. Like, how much does this cost every year? How much does it spend every year? If I go to Burger King and I buy an $8 meal once a week, and there's 52 weeks in a year, how much am I spending? 416. But if instead, as a treat for myself, I go to Burger King and I buy, let's say, $2 cheeseburger and a $1, and I get a pop from Walmart for $1 for like a whole thing for like $2, and I end up splitting it up so I have one each week. How much I spend? I spend like $4 or $3. If you spend three and times that by 52, 156. You're talking about a $250 difference. That's like a sofa. You know what I mean? That's like a sofa you could have from Walmart. Not a good sofa, but a sofa. Like that's a car repair. That's like a windshield right there. There's this. If you can make these small changes to your life, you can end up saving yourself large in the long run. If you avoid these, as I call them, poor taxes, like if your friends all go to a casino and you don't go to a casino with them, and you end up saving money as a direct result of that, you save quite a bit. You're not going to be like that person who goes to the casino and wins because there's not that many of them. It's kind of like, you ever seen that guy who was like the best guy in your sports team, and everyone thought they were going to be something awesome, and then they went on to college and they were awesome in college, and then they didn't get picked up by a professional team. And they have a degree and all that, and it's awesome, but they didn't end up like being a football star. Or you end up talking to that guy who did the same thing, but they dropped out of high school, and that high school was the end of it. They were awesome. They spent all their time on it, and poof, they're gone. Like the amount of people who actually get one of these super rare roles, and we're talking like acting, we're talking like singing, we're talking like gambling, like we're talking casinos, we're talking lottery, we're talking all the lottery based winning systems where you have like a very large pool but a very small number go into it, like professional gaming. Like, how many people are going to actually be a professional gamer versus how many try? There are very, very few. But if you look into something like geologists, like how many people become a geologist versus how many try? You maybe talk 1 in 10 or something like that. Like how many people who start off like enter college and then end up getting a PhD in it. You're talking about a very small number, but in comparison, it's way better. It's better than 1 in 1 million. 1 in 10 is like doable. 1 in 1 million, no. Like that's why you see people with degrees in accounting rich. Why you see people with great degrees in IT rich. The thing you see people with all these degrees doing significantly better. All these trade skills of the modern day, like plumbers, black gold. Like you know what I mean? It's stupid to say, but it's a dirty job. No one wants to do it, and it pays a lot because no one's doing it. Like I'll give an example. My aunt lives with this dude. His name's Dave. I think they're like boyfriend and girlfriend. I don't fully comprehend the situation. She seems to be embarrassed by it because it's a class desperation. But the thing is, like, you can be upper class in income as a plumber. And the reason why is how many people are plumbers? No one wants to be a plumber. It's gross. It's disgusting. It takes a certain kind of person. It takes essentially a sacrificing your pride, but you're able to earn like a decent living. Like you're able to drive sports cars. You're able to do all that cool shit, which I guess they're status symbols, which negate. Most people don't want to bother with that because they don't want to negate it. But obviously, you live longer the more money you make too, because you can afford better healthcare, better food. Blah, same difference. But the thing is, it's just like if you think about it correctly, many people will see this life we live in as a prison. We're stuck in a system, but because it's a system, it has strings. It has ways things work, ways things don't work. And if you start to look at it objectively, like which strings can I pull in which ways? Like if I spend this credit card on this thing where I'm not penalized for using your credit card and I get 1% of it back, and I do this 1,000 times a year and I end up making like $150 out of it, that $150 is free, essentially. That's $150 that could have been wages. That could have been like you doing what, like 50 hours of work or something. Like if you find 1,000 different ways of those to save money, you can cut your cost of living down so significantly that it will essentially raise the value of your living, or raise what you can afford, or raise how many times you can go out and buy something you like versus being stuck at home doing nothing. So I guess the end kind of thing here is in terms of avoiding poor taxes, it's just if you think about it and you spend time thinking and crunching the numbers on different things, you will save yourself quite a thing. You will live longer as a direct result because you'll be able to afford better health care, better food, all that shit by essentially avoiding these poor taxes, which is sometimes certain things you can do, certain ways you do things, and certain ways you purchase things. But if you follow this advice here, you should be able to do kind of something similar. Which I mean, it's not a lot. Like saving $2,000 or $3,000 a year is not the greatest thing in the world, but that could be a car paid off or a vacation done. And the thing is, if you think about it objectively and you follow these and you live these as your way of going, yes, it sucks. Yes, there's things that are stupid about it. Yes, there are certain limitations you're self-imposing on yourself as a direct result, but the cost of your life goes down. The cost of certain things goes down. When your car breaks, you have money to fix it versus letting it break even more because you didn't fix it. Like it's just huge long game things that you're solving by living in the correct way or living frugally, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, that's about it. And hopefully this has helped someone else. It's just stuff I wish I knew earlier. So obviously passing it on does not seem like a bad decision.